Morning, all. All right, so we have 11 games in the National Hockey League tonight. We have, 4 of them starting at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern. 2 of them half an hour after that, 1 a half an hour later, and it's going to be a busy night. So, that being said, starting at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, the New York Rangers in against the New Jersey Devils. These teams have already met twice. The Rangers have won both games. On November 14th, it was a 4-3 shootout victory for the New York Rangers. On March 4th, it was a 3-1 win for the New York Rangers. The fourth and final meeting between these teams will be April 5th. So for the New York Rangers, they're 40-18-5, and they're all in. I think they've done well with what they've done at the deadline. Now we start to see how this is going to work out for them. The last 10 games, they're 7-3. They've won 2 in a row. Away from home, they're 20-12-2. They're only 3 points back at Carolina now. They are tied with Pittsburgh, 3 points back at Carolina, and they're 5 points ahead of Washington. So, again, that division from first through fourth is an 8-point difference. So, yeah, pretty close. On the New Jersey side, they just want to play spoiler. They're 22-35-5 overall. Last 10 games, they're 4-6. They've lost 3 in a row in regulation. They're 3 points behind Buffalo, 2 points behind Philadelphia, and they're tied with Ottawa, where they are in the standings. So, trying to play spoiler, as will Columbus. Another game starting at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, the third of 4 meetings between Columbus and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's won both of those meetings to start the season. So, January 21st, Pittsburgh wins 5-2. February 27th, Pittsburgh wins 3-2. The fourth and final meeting will finish out the season on April 29th. Columbus, 32-28-3 is their overall record. Last 10 games are 5-3-2. They did win their last game. Away from home, they're 14-15-0. They're 13 points behind Washington for that final playoff spot, so not happening. They're also 6 points ahead of the Islanders, so they're pretty comfortably in the spot they're in. We'll see if they stay in that spot the rest of the year. Pittsburgh, 38-16-9. Last 10 games, they're 7-2-1. They've won 2 in a row. At home, they're 17-9-5. They're 3 points behind Carolina, tied with the Rangers, 5 points ahead of Washington. Again, going to be interesting to see how that division ends up playing out and who ends up matched up against who. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start time between the St. Louis Blues against the Washington Capitals. Now, St. Louis has had a tough time of it lately, so me wearing the Blues, it's just going on a hunch that they have to get one here. 34-18-9 is their overall record. The last 10 games, they're 3-4-3. They lost their last game in regulation. I think they're due to get it going and have a big game. Away from home, they're 14-11-5. They're 1 point behind Nashville and Minnesota now. So now they're in a wild card spot. They're 5 points ahead of Vegas. So things have gotten a little bit more perilous now for St. Louis. Although think about it, Calgary's reward in the first round could be a matchup with St. Louis, the 2019 Cup champs. Be interesting. So for Washington, they're 35-19-10. Last 10 games, they're 7-2-1. They lost their last game in regulation. At home, they're 15-12-5. So at home, they're not as good as they are on the road. They're 5 points behind both the Rangers and Pittsburgh. They're 3 points behind Boston, who are the number 1 wild card. And again, 13 points ahead of Columbus. So pretty comfortably above that playoff line. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific start time between Tampa Bay and the Carolina Hurricanes. For Tampa Bay, they lost the first matchup, 2-1 in overtime against Carolina. They'll be looking to even up the season series. These teams meet again in a week. March 29th. So for Tampa, they're 39-16-6. Last 10 games, they're 5-5. They lost their last game. Away from home, they're 20-10-2. They're 6 points behind Florida. They're 1 point ahead of Toronto. So Florida's getting a little bit far ahead of them for them to really think about being number 1, but they have to keep an eye on the fact that they're barely in that second spot right now. Carolina, on the other hand, 41-15-6. Last 10 games, they're 4-4-2. They lost their last game in regulation. At home, they're 23-5-3. They're 3 points ahead of both the Rangers and Pittsburgh. They're 8 points ahead of the Washington Capitals. So Carolina, still most likely to end up winning that division, but it has become more perilous now than what it was, say, 2 weeks ago. 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific start time between Philadelphia and Detroit. And again, when I do the review, when I'm taking all the notes and all that fun stuff, the games that feature teams that are both outside of the playoff picture, those are the games I'm not going to spend as much time paying attention to because they don't have a playoff implication to them. So Detroit's won both matchups with Philadelphia so far this year. 6-3 on February 9th, and 4-2 on February 12th. Philadelphia's 20, 31, and 11. Last 10 games, they're 4-5-1. They did win their last game. Away from home, they're 7, 16, and 5. They're 6 points behind Detroit. They're 1 point behind Buffalo. They're 2 points ahead of both Ottawa and the New Jersey Devils. On the Detroit side, they're 25, 30, and 7. They're coming off of that loss against Seattle, which rounded out that road trip. At least they beat Vancouver. Their last 10 games, they're 2, 7, and 1. They lost their last game, as I said. They're 16, 12, and 4 at home, so they're better at home than on the road. They're 4 points behind the Islanders. They're 5 points ahead of Buffalo, 6 points ahead of the Philadelphia Flyers. So for Detroit, again, playing out the string, Philadelphia playing out the string, this could end up being a fun game. Or it might be one of those 1-0 snoozers. We'll see. Also, 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific start at home for the New York Islanders. The visitors being the Ottawa Senators. The Islanders have won both meetings so far this year. December 7th, the score was 5-3. February 1st, the score was 4-1. So they're just trying to sweep the season series from Ottawa. Ottawa's 22, 35, and 5. Last 10 games, they're 3 and 7. They did lose their last game. They're 3 points behind Buffalo, 2 points behind Philadelphia, and they're tied with New Jersey. Now, they did kind of sell at the deadline, but they didn't lose that much really at the deadline, so they should be just as competitive as before that. Understanding they were 3 and 7 in their last 10, though. The Islanders 26, 25, and 9 overall. Last 10 games, they're 6, 3, and 1. They lost their last game in regulation. At home, they're 15, 12, and 4. So at least their home record's gotten better. They're 6 points behind Columbus, 4 points ahead of Detroit. And for a team that's not making the playoffs, they've been playing well lately. I understand why Lou Lamoriello didn't panic at the deadline, but I'm still surprised he didn't do anything at the deadline. Anyways, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific start between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg's won both matchups, and they need this one tonight. They won 5-4 in overtime on January 2nd. March 15th, they won 7-3. So they need this one tonight. Vegas needs it too. They're 34, 27, and 4. Last 10 games, they're 4 and 6. They lost their last game. Away from home, they're 16, 14, and 1. They're 3 points behind Edmonton, 5 points behind St. Louis, and 1 point ahead of the Dallas Stars. On the Winnipeg side, 29, 24, and 10 is their overall record. At home, last 10 games, they're 6, 3, and 1. They won their last game. Now, at home, they're 16, 12, and 2. So they're better at home than they are on the road. Which is interesting because away from home, Vegas was, I'll say 3 weeks ago, they were great away from home, and now it's kind of become a mess. So 4 points back of Vegas for Winnipeg, 3 points back of Dallas. They are tied with Vancouver in points, and this is their chance to go ahead. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one tonight for the Winnipeg Jets. If they can get within 2 points of Vegas, or maybe they'll be chasing Dallas after tonight. At 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific, the Oilers are in against Dallas. Dallas won the first meeting on November 23rd, 4-1. The third meeting between these teams will be on April 20th. So whether or not Dallas makes the playoffs, the Oilers could have a great say in that. The Oilers are 35, 23, and 5 overall. Last 10 games, they're 6, 2, and 2. They lost in overtime last night against Colorado. What's interesting is, from a power rankings perspective, I was more impressed with the game last night for the Oilers than I was with their wins at home against Buffalo and New Jersey. I found that one to be more telling that, yes, they're playing at a really high level, so it helped them on the power rankings. Wins and losses don't always decide who moves up and down. So 35, 23, and 5. Away from home, they're 16, 11, and 5. They're 1 point back of LA now, so they're right close to jumping past LA, depending on what the Kings do tonight. They're 3 points ahead of Vegas and 4 points ahead of Dallas. So they're not out of the woods when it comes to being above that playoff line. Dallas, on the other hand, 34, 24, and 3. They've played less games than everybody else, but that also means they've got a lot of games left. At home, last 10 games, they're 6 and 4. They won their last game. At home, they're 20, 8, and 1. They're very good at home. Their road record, a little spottier. They're 1 point behind Vegas, 3 points ahead of both Winnipeg and Vancouver. So for Dallas, this is one of those, if you win, you might be above the playoff line kind of games. It's been a struggle for them in recent weeks. So we'll see where that ends up for them. 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific start time between San Jose and Calgary. San Jose's won both matchups, interestingly enough. 4-1 on November 9th and 5-3 on December 7th. So they know how to beat Calgary. The fourth meeting between these teams will be on April 7th. San Jose's 27-27-8. Their last 10 games are 4-4-2. They did win their last game. Away from home, they're 12-13-4. They're 10 points out of the playoffs. They're 10 points back of Vegas. Calgary's 38-16-8. Last 10 games, they're 6-2-2. They won their last game. At home, they're 19-5-6. And they've really got quite the lead atop that division. They're 8 points ahead of LA. They're 9 points ahead of Edmonton. So pretty comfortable lead for them. If they can get their first win of the season against San Jose, that may very well expand that lead, again, depending on what LA does tonight. 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific start time between Seattle and Arizona. So this is an interesting one. Arizona's won both matchups. They're trying to sweep the season series. They won 5-4 on November 6th and 5-2 on February 9th. Seattle's 19-38-6. Last 10 games, they're 3-5-2. They did win their last game. Away from home, they're 8-20-3. They're 9 points back of Chicago, and they're tied with Arizona. So this may very well be the draft lottery bowl that we're looking at here. Arizona 20-38-4. Last 10 games, they're 6-4, but they've lost their last 2 games. At home, they're 11-18-3. They're 9 points back of Chicago as well, of course, and tied with Seattle. So this might be the lottery bowl. There you go. Reason to watch the game. 10:30 Eastern, 7:30 Pacific start time between Nashville and LA. Nashville's won both matchups in this season series, and they're coming off of a big win last night over Anaheim. They won 2-1 on October 19th. They won 4-2 on January 6th. So we'll see what happens with this one tonight. For Nashville, they're 37-22-4. Last 10 games, they're 7-3. They won 2 in a row. Away from home, they're 18-11-4. They're tied with Minnesota. Both teams being a point ahead of St. Louis. So right now, Nashville and Minnesota would meet in the first round if the playoffs started today. They're 7 points ahead of Dallas. So pretty clear of the playoff line, but again, we'll see what ends up happening with the Central because things could tighten up fast. If Dallas wins their games in hand, then all bets are off, but they have to win those games in hand. The LA Kings 34-22-8, battered and bruised LA Kings. Last 10 games are 5-4-1. They did lose their last game. At home, they're 16-13-3. They're 6 points behind Calgary. So that says 8. This says 6. Let me just take a quick look. Yeah, the 8's the right number. That was too optimistic. They're 1 point ahead of the Edmonton Oilers and 4 points ahead of Vegas. So, for the LA Kings, it's about trying to get within 6 points of Calgary. So the optimist right there says, they're 6 points back, sure. We will see, but of course they need San Jose to beat Calgary in Calgary. And lately, winning in Calgary has not been easy for anybody who's not Calgary. So let me know in the comment section below your winners in these 11 games. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.